burner phone nearly slipped from Selvara Noxen's blood-slick fingers. She caught it against her chest and instantly regretted the movement. Something sharp shifted beneath her left breast. Bone scraped against bone. A white explosion of agony tore through her ribs, crushing the air from her lungs before she could scream. She folded deeper into the darkness of the wardrobe, one hand clamped over her mouth, the other protecting the tiny plastic phone, as though it were the last beating heart in her body. Beyond the ironwood doors, Vantress Keep remained unnaturally quiet. Ravik had gone downstairs. For a drink, he had said, as though he had not left his mate bleeding across their bedroom floor. As though the sound of her ribs breaking had not followed him out of the room. Selvara listened through the pounding in her skull. No footsteps yet. No key entering the lock. But Ravik would return. He always returned. And when he did, he would inspect the room, inspect her expression, inspect the air itself, for any trace of disobedience. If he discovered the wardrobe floor disturbed, there would be no explanation that could save her. Her knees trembled beneath the weight of her crouched body. Every breath came shallow and incomplete. She could feel the damage inside her. 3 fractures at least, perhaps 4, with one rib sitting at an angle that made each inhale feel like swallowing a blade. The loose floorboard beneath her winter clothes waited inches away. Selvara pushed aside a pair of boots and dug her fingertips into the narrow crack. The board resisted. She pulled harder. Pain ripped through her side. Darkness flashed across her vision. "Please," she breathed, though she did not know whether she was pleading with the wood, her body, or whatever god still listened to women trapped behind locked doors. The panel lifted. Beneath it lay the burner phone she had hidden almost a year earlier. No contacts. No photographs. No messages. Nothing Ravik could trace. There was only one number, never written down, repeated silently so many nights that it had become part of her heartbeat. The private number of Alpha King Otheryn Valcor. He had placed it in her hand 5 years ago and told her to use it only once. Selvara had imagined this moment countless times. In those imaginings, she had always been braver. She had never imagined blood under her fingernails or broken bones grinding inside her chest. She had never imagined that reaching for salvation could feel so much like signing her own execution order. Her thumb hovered above the blank message field. If Otheryn ignored her, Ravik would eventually find the phone. If the number no longer belonged to him, she had exposed herself for nothing. If the Alpha King remembered her but refused to interfere, Ravik would make tonight's punishment seem merciful. A door closed somewhere below. Selvara froze. Heavy footsteps crossed the lower corridor, not coming upstairs yet, but moving. Her time was disappearing. She entered the number from memory. Each digit blurred through the tears filling her eyes. She checked it once, then again, terrified that a single mistake would send her last plea into the hands of a stranger. The message field remained empty. What could 5 years of silence possibly contain? Help me. He will kill me. I cannot survive another night. None of it felt sufficient. None of it explained the years of fear, the vanished letters, the rehearsed smiles, or the way Ravik touched her gently in public with the same hands that broke her in private. A floorboard creaked beyond the bedroom. Selvara stopped thinking. Her thumb moved. He has broken my ribs. 5 words. No greeting. No explanation. No request. Only the truth. She pressed send. The message changed to delivered. 1 second passed. Selvara stared at the screen, listening to her own fractured breathing. 2 seconds. A staircase groaned beneath someone's weight. 3. The phone vibrated. A reply appeared. I'm coming, and he won't survive. Selvara forgot to breathe. The words were not comfort. They were not reassurance. They were a verdict. Alpha King Otheryn Valcor had not promised to negotiate with Ravik. He had not asked for evidence or offered to send assistance. He was coming himself. And somewhere between those 6 words, the ruler of the continental Lycan territories had sentenced the Alpha of Vantress to death. Hope struck Selvara first. Cold, violent, and almost painful. Terror followed. She had not simply called for rescue. She had invited the crown across protected borders. She had given the most powerful wolf alive a reason to enter Mournpine territory and challenge a seated alpha inside his own stronghold. Engines, enforcers, blood and war flashed through her mind. Then footsteps entered the hallway. Slow, measured, familiar. Ravik was returning. Selvara lunged for the loose floorboard, but agony locked her body in place. The private suite lock began to turn while the burner phone still glowed in her bloody hand. The lock turning was not where the nightmare began. Several hours earlier, Vantress Keep had looked magnificent beneath the rain. Black riverstone walls rose from the wilderness of Mournpine territory, like a fortress carved directly from the mountain. To the Vantress pack, the estate was proof that their alpha had made them untouchable. To Selvara Noxen, it was a prison whose doors rarely needed to be locked. Ravik controlled everything waiting beyond them. He controlled the guards stationed along the private roads. He controlled which vehicles entered the territory and which letters left it. He controlled the pack physicians, the household staff, and the elders who praised his leadership while carefully ignoring the fear surrounding his mate. 3 years earlier, Selvara had still received invitations from old friends. Then the invitations stopped. Ravik told her they had grown tired of her. Her cousin wrote twice asking why Selvara had refused to attend her mating ceremony. Selvara never saw the letters until months later, when she discovered one torn envelope beneath the ashes of Ravik's study fireplace. "You declined the invitation yourself," Ravik had said when she confronted him. "I never received it." His expression had softened with patient concern. "You did, Selvara. You were crying when you read it. You said your cousin had always envied you." "I never said that." Ravik had touched her cheek. "You forget things when you become emotional. We have discussed this." By the time Selvara stopped arguing, she no longer knew whether she had forgotten the letter or whether Ravik had destroyed it. That uncertainty became his favorite weapon. He denied conversations that had happened only hours earlier. He changed instructions after she followed them, then punished her for disobedience. When she remembered events differently, he lowered his voice and asked whether she was becoming unstable. Physical violence came later. Ravik was too intelligent to begin with bruises. First, he taught Selvara that no one would believe her. Then he made sure the evidence disappeared before anyone could see it. Werewolf healing became his accomplice. Finger-shaped marks faded overnight. Split lips sealed before breakfast. A dislocated shoulder repaired itself before the pack physician arrived. Ravik never struck her in public. He never lost control in front of witnesses. To everyone else, Alpha Ravik Drenhal was a model ruler. He had strengthened Vantress borders without provoking war. He negotiated hunting access with rival packs, secured profitable trade routes through human territories, and remembered the names of every warrior's child. He laughed easily. He listened when people spoke. He made cruelty look impossible. That evening, he stood at the head of the formal dining table, welcoming Alpha Jorvan Lask with the warmth of an old friend. "Your journey through the southern pass was comfortable, I hope," Ravik said. Jorvan removed his rain-darkened gloves and accepted the wine offered by a servant. "Comfortable enough. Your patrols found us before we crossed the second marker. They are trained to notice everything." Ravik's gaze briefly touched Selvara. The words sounded ordinary. She understood the warning beneath them. The negotiations concerned the Eastern Migration Corridor, a narrow stretch of forest used by several packs during winter hunts. For most of dinner, Selvara remained silent. She knew the rules. Speak when addressed. Never contradict Ravik. Never display knowledge he had not invited her to display. Jorvan broke the pattern. He studied an old map spread across the table, tracing one finger along a faded line near the northern ridge. "These markings suggest the corridor once extended beyond Vantress territory," he said. "Yet the present boundary cuts through it. Was the original survey inaccurate?" Ravik reached for his wine. "The records from that period are unreliable." Selvara looked at the map before she could stop herself. Jorvin noticed. "You disagree, Luna." Ravik's hand became still around the stem of his glass. Selvara should have lowered her eyes. Instead, she saw the faded symbol beside the ridge and remembered the territorial archives she had studied before Ravik restricted her access to the library. "The survey was accurate," she said carefully. "The river changed course during the Black Thaw. The boundary marker was not moved. The land moved around it." Jorvin leaned closer to the map. Selvara pointed toward 3 nearly invisible notations. The original corridor followed the western bank. When the flood split the river, the newer channel created the appearance that the migration path crossed Vantress land. Legally, the protected passage still follows the old bed beneath the forest. For several minutes, she forgot to be afraid. Her thoughts moved freely for the first time in months. Jorvin listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat back with open admiration. "That resolves the entire dispute." Selvara's small smile appeared before she remembered she was not supposed to enjoy being noticed. Jorvin lifted his glass. "To Vantress," he declared, "and to the brilliant Luna whose understanding of this territory may have prevented an unnecessary conflict." The guests raised their glasses. Ravik smiled. His shoulders remained relaxed. His voice carried effortless pride. "My mate has always possessed an exceptional mind." Beneath the table, his fingers closed around Selvara's hand. To Jorvin, it appeared affectionate. His grip tightened until the delicate bones in her fingers pressed painfully together. Selvara looked at Ravik. His smile had not changed. Only one muscle moved along his jaw. Then the warmth vanished from his amber eyes. Her happiness died instantly. She knew that look. Ravik released her hand and continued discussing the revised corridor as though nothing had happened. He invited Jorvin to inspect the northern markers at sunrise. He ordered another bottle of wine opened and praised Selvara's contribution twice more. Each compliment sharpened the dread inside her. When he rested his hand against the back of her chair, she felt as though he had placed a blade between her shoulders. The final course ended. One advisor departed, then another. Jorvin thanked Selvara again before Ravik embraced him warmly and promised that Vantress would honor the corrected boundary. The main doors closed behind the last guest. Silence entered the dining hall. Ravik offered Selvara his arm. "Come upstairs, my love." She placed her hand on him, because refusing would only make what waited above worse. He escorted her through the glowing corridors, greeting every servant they passed. His posture remained elegant. His expression remained calm. At the top of the staircase, he opened the doors to their private suite and allowed Selvara to enter first. Then Ravik stepped inside, closed the doors behind him, and quietly turned the lock. The click of the lock was soft. That made it worse. Ravik remained beside the door for several seconds, one hand resting on the key while the warmth he had worn downstairs disappeared from his face. The courteous host vanished without a raised voice, an angry gesture, or even a change in posture. Selvara stood near the center of the private suite, still wearing the silver-blue gown selected for the dinner. Her fingers ached where he had crushed them beneath the table. Ravik removed his jacket and placed it carefully across the back of a chair. "Did you enjoy yourself tonight?" His voice was quiet enough that she could hear the rain striking the smoked glass windows. Selvara swallowed. "The negotiations went well." "That was not my question." He crossed to the dressing table and began removing his cufflinks. Each small piece of black metal landed on the polished surface with a precise click. "Did you enjoy humiliating me in front of Alpha Jorvin Lask?" Selvara's heart accelerated. "I didn't humiliate you." He asked about the boundary records. "And you were desperate to answer." "I was trying to help." Ravik looked at her through the mirror. You became animated for him. The accusation was delivered with such calm certainty that Selvara almost searched her own memory for evidence of wrongdoing. We were discussing territorial history. You smiled at him. He resolved the dispute because of the information. No. Ravik turned from the mirror. He resolved nothing. You interrupted negotiations between two alphas because you wanted another male to admire you. Selvara took a small step backward. Ravik noticed. He always noticed. I answered a question, she said. That was all. You displayed knowledge I did not ask you to display. You allowed him to praise you at my table, beneath my roof, in front of my advisors. His expression remained composed, but something cold moved behind his amber eyes. You made it appear that I cannot control my own Luna. Selvara's shoulders touched the heavy velvet curtains. Ravik, please. Please what? He slipped the final cufflink free. Please forget what you did? Please allow you to undermine me without consequence? I did not undermine you. The words escaped before she could stop them. Silence filled the room. Ravik placed the cufflink beside the others. You still believe that your intentions matter more than my authority. Selvara lowered her gaze. I'm sorry. You are always sorry after you force me to correct you. He moved. One moment he stood beside the dressing table. The next, his hand closed around her throat. Selvara's back struck the wall hard enough to rattle the framed paintings. Ravik lifted her until the tips of her shoes left the carpet. Pressure crushed her airway. Her hands seized his wrist, but his arm did not shift. He watched her struggle with the detached concentration of a physician observing a symptom. Ravik knew exactly how much pressure would keep her conscious. He wanted her awake. He wanted her to understand. Ravik leaned closer. You do not speak for Vantress unless I permit it. His fingers tightened. You do not offer another alpha anything. Not your opinion, not your attention, and certainly not that smile. Selvara's nails scraped against his skin. He did not bleed. You exist beside me because I allow it. Then he released her. Selvara fell hard, collapsing at the base of the wall. Air tore back into her lungs in a ragged gasp that burned through her throat. She barely saw Ravik step toward her. His polished shoe drove into her left side. The impact made a deep. The pain arrived so violently that Selvara's mind could not contain it. Her mouth opened, but the scream emerged as a thin, broken rush of air. She curled instinctively around the injury. She tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her cheek. Ravik crouched beside her. He placed 2 fingers against her side, pressing carefully along the damaged ribs. Selvara jerked away, but his other hand caught her shoulder and held her still. 3 fractures, he said. 1 complete break. He sounded almost satisfied with his accuracy. They will begin knitting before midnight. Most of the damage should be gone by tomorrow evening. Selvara stared at him through watering eyes. Ravik brushed a strand of hair away from her face. Every breath you take until then will remind you who you belong to. His touch was gentle. That frightened her more than the kick. You are my Luna, he continued. Your intelligence belongs to me. Your voice belongs to me. If I decide the room should hear you, then you may speak. He rose and adjusted the front of his shirt. I am going downstairs for a drink. Selvara pressed one hand to her ribs, fighting to keep each breath shallow. Clean the blood from your mouth before I return. If I find you looking like this, I will break the right side as well. Symmetry may help you remember. He walked to the door without looking back. The lock turned from the outside. Selvara remained on the floor until his footsteps disappeared down the corridor. For 3 years, she had survived by believing the next punishment would be the last. If she became quieter, more obedient, or less visible, perhaps Ravik would stop. Lying there with broken bone shifting beneath her skin, she finally understood the truth. He would not stop. One day he would calculate badly. One day he would strike too hard. One day her healing would not be fast enough. If she remained at Vantress Keep, Ravik would eventually kill her. Selvara dragged herself toward the wardrobe. Every movement ground the fractured edges together. She advanced inches at a time, leaving a faint red mark where blood escaped the corner of her mouth. The ironwood doors seemed impossibly distant. She reached them, pulled herself inside, and pushed aside her winter boots. The loose floor panel resisted her shaking fingers. She lifted it. The hidden burner phone waited beneath. 5 years of fear reduced themselves to one memorized number, 5 words and 3 unbearable seconds. "He has broken my ribs." Then Otheryn's answer, "I'm coming, and he won't survive." Footsteps entered the hallway. Selvara forced the phone beneath the floor panel, but twisting her body displaced the broken rib. Pain locked her arm before the wood settled completely. The private suite door opened. Ravik stepped inside. He stopped just beyond the threshold and inhaled slowly. His amber eyes narrowed. Something in the room smelled different. Selvara had managed to drag herself from the wardrobe to the foot of the bed, but the loose floor panel behind her had not settled perfectly into place. A narrow black line remained visible beneath the row of winter boots. Ravik stood just inside the doorway holding a silver tray. A glass of water rested beside 2 white tablets. Concern softened his features so convincingly that anyone entering the room would have mistaken him for a devoted mate returning to care for the woman he loved. He inhaled again. "Your fear has changed." Selvara kept her eyes fixed on the carpet. Looking toward the wardrobe would condemn her. "I'm in more pain." Ravik closed the door behind him. The tray made no sound as he placed it on the bedside table. He approached slowly, studying her posture, the blood drying at the corner of her mouth, and the arm wrapped protectively around her left side. "You were afraid when I left," he said. "This is something else." Selvara forced herself to take a deeper breath. The broken rib shifted. Pain knifed through her chest so sharply that her face drained of color. She let the reaction remain visible. "It's getting worse." Ravik watched her for several long seconds. His gaze moved toward the wardrobe. Selvara's pulse hammered. 1 step. That was all it would take for him to notice the disturbed floorboard. He turned back to her. "Look at me." Selvara raised her head. Ravik crouched until their faces were level. His thumb wiped the blood from her lower lip, then examined the dark smear it left across his skin. "Lying to an alpha is dangerous," he said quietly. "Lying to the alpha whose mark you carry is worse." "I'm not lying." His eyes searched hers for the slightest break in rhythm. Selvara imagined the burner phone sealed beneath the floor. She imagined the message still glowing on its screen. She imagined Otheryn somewhere beyond Mournpine territory, reading those 5 words, and deciding whether his promise was worth crossing an army to fulfill. Ravik's fingers tightened around her chin. Then his expression softened. "I believe you." Relief almost made Selvara collapse. Ravik released her and reached for the tablets. "You see what happens when you force me to act." He held them against her lips. Selvara took them and swallowed with the water he provided. "I hate this part," Ravik continued. "I hate seeing you hurt." The cruelty of the statement stole more breath than the fractured ribs. "You could have avoided all of it. You know that." Selvara lowered her gaze. Ravik sighed as though her suffering exhausted him. A pack survives through order. Warriors obey their commanders. Omegas obey their superiors. A Luna must understand the difference between offering counsel and challenging her alpha before outsiders. "I wasn't challenging you." The words slipped out weakly. Ravik smiled. "There. You are doing it again." Selvara went silent. He stroked her hair. "You injure us both when you refuse to learn." Then he slid one arm beneath her knees and the other behind her back. "No," Selvara breathed. Ravik lifted her. The fractured bones dragged against one another. A strangled cry escaped before she could stop it. Her fingers seized the front of his shirt, not for comfort, but because her body needed something to hold while the room tilted around her. Ravik carried her to the bed with measured care. "Easy," he murmured. "You will make it worse if you fight me." He lowered her onto the mattress. Another wave of pain tore through her side. Selvara bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted fresh blood. Ravik pulled the blankets over her body, arranged the pillows beneath her head, and brushed her hair away from her damp forehead. "There will be a pack assembly at 8. Selvara stared at him. "You expect me to attend?" "I expect my Luna to stand beside me. I can barely breathe. You will heal." His thumb moved gently across her temple. "And you will smile." He bent and kissed her forehead. The touch felt colder than the rain beyond the windows. "Sleep. Tomorrow, we show Vantress that nothing can fracture what we have built." Ravik undressed, extinguished the lamps, and climbed into the bed beside her. Within minutes, his breathing became deep and even. Selvara remained awake. Her body had already begun repairing itself. Usually healing brought relief. Tonight, it became another form of torture, but the complete break had shifted during her crawl to the wardrobe. She felt it joining incorrectly. Each pulse sealed the mistake more firmly inside her. Hours passed. The rain stopped before dawn. Ravik woke when someone knocked discreetly at the outer door. He left the bed and spoke to a steward in the corridor about the morning assembly. His voice carried no trace of the man who had broken Selvara only hours earlier. The moment the door closed behind him, the adjoining service entrance opened. Maelys Oren slipped into the room. The elderly Omega moved quickly, despite the permanent stiffness in her right leg. She carried a small pouch of herbs and a folded cloth. Her face changed when she saw Selvara. "Oh, child." "Quiet," Selvara whispered. "He's close." Maelys reached the bed and pulled back the blanket. Her fingers hovered over Selvara's left side before touching her with unbearable gentleness. A faint warmth spread from her palms as she released the small amount of healing energy available to an Omega of her age. Maelys's expression tightened. "This is wrong." Selvara's stomach turned cold. "What is?" The complete break shifted. Maelys pressed carefully above the damaged area. "Your body is joining it at an angle. Can you fix it?" "Not now. Not without breaking it apart again." Selvara closed her eyes. Maelys gripped her hand. "I have stronger medicine below, moonroot mixed with wolfsbane resin. It will slow the healing and dull the pain until I can bring someone trustworthy." "No, you cannot remain like this." "Go back to your quarters." Maelys stared at her. "Selvara, lock your door and do not come out." Fear entered the older woman's eyes. "What have you done?" Selvara thought of the hidden phone, of silver eyes remembered across 5 years, of 6 words that had sounded like the opening declaration of a war. "A storm is coming." Footsteps sounded outside. Maelys snatched up the cloth and herbs. The handle began to move. She slipped through the service entrance just as Ravik returned. His gaze swept across the room. For one terrible instant, he looked directly at the narrow door through which Maelys had vanished. Then he turned toward Selvara. Morning had erased every visible sign of his anger. He opened the wardrobe, selected a high-necked blue dress, and placed it across the bed. "This one," he said, "and use more powder than usual. You look pale." There had been no engines during the night, no royal soldiers at the gates, no message beyond the first reply. As Selvara dressed, doubt began devouring the hope that had kept her alive. Perhaps Otheryn had never intended to come. Perhaps the number belonged to someone else now. Perhaps the Alpha King had remembered her only long enough to send a threat he would never fulfill. Ravik fastened the final button at the back of her dress and rested his hand against her injured side. Selvara flinched. His smile remained pleasant. "Control yourself." He escorted her through Vantress Keep with one possessive hand pressed between her shoulders. The courtyard doors opened. More than 300 wolves were waiting. Ravik guided Selvara onto the raised stone platform, stepped before the gathered pack, and spread his arms. "My brothers and sisters," he announced, "look upon the woman whose devotion proves the strength of everything we have built." Applause rolled across the courtyard. Selvara stood at his left beneath the carved ironwood crest of the Vantress pack, one hand hidden inside the folds of her blue dress so no one would see it guarding her ribs. The high collar concealed the fading marks around her throat. Powder softened the gray beneath her eyes. From a distance, she looked composed. Up close, every breath betrayed her. The broken rib had fused at an angle during the night. Whenever her lungs expanded, something sharp dragged beneath the skin of her left side. She could not straighten completely, but Ravik's hand rested between her shoulders, silently warning her not to bend. 300 wolves filled the stone courtyard. Warriors stood in disciplined rows. Elders occupied the front seats. Omegas and household servants gathered near the walls, where their presence would be noticed, but their voices would not. They all watched Ravik with admiration. "My friends," he continued, "Vantress enters this season stronger than it has ever been. Our boundaries remain secure. Our stores are full. Our influence reaches from the Mornpine passes to the Western Council chambers." A murmur of pride moved through the crowd. Ravik turned toward Selvara and offered the same affectionate smile he had worn at dinner. "None of that strength exists without loyalty, and no one has shown greater loyalty than my Luna." His fingers slid around her hand. The pack applauded again. Selvara forced her lips upward. The smile felt brittle enough to crack. She searched the distant tree line beyond the iron gates. No convoy, no royal banner, no sign that Alpha King Otheryn Valcor had crossed even 1 mile of Mornpine territory. Ravik lifted her hand and pressed a kiss against her knuckles. "My graceful Selvara has stood beside me through every challenge. She is proof that discipline, devotion, and unity can make a pack unbreakable." The word discipline struck her harder than his grip. Several elders smiled approvingly. Some of the Omegas lowered their eyes. They knew. Perhaps not everything, but enough. They had smelled fear clinging to her clothing. They had seen her disappear from gatherings and return the following day with movements too careful to be natural. They had watched Meles carry medicines upstairs at impossible hours. Yet Ravik called the silence loyalty, and the entire pack accepted the name. The applause began to fade. Then the air changed. Selvara felt it first as a pressure behind her eyes. Not pain. Weight. An invisible force descended over the courtyard, heavy enough to make her knees weaken beneath the silk of her dress. The nearest Omega gasped. Another dropped the tray she had been carrying. Silver cups struck the stones, but the sound seemed strangely distant. A young servant collapsed beside her. Then 3 more followed. Across the courtyard, wolves began turning toward the forest with widening eyes. Hands rose to throats. Shoulders folded. Several Omegas fell to both knees, their bodies surrendering before their minds understood why. The pressure deepened. A Vantress warrior staggered out of formation. Another bent at the waist and vomited onto the cobblestones. The strongest fighters remained standing, but only barely. Their jaws clenched. Muscles shook beneath their uniforms. One veteran reached for the stone wall as his wolf forced his head sideways, exposing his throat in involuntary submission. Ravik released Selvara's hand. "What is this?" No one answered. The birds had stopped singing. A moment earlier, crows had circled the pines beyond Vantress Keep. Now the branches stood empty. Even the wind had vanished. The pack banners hung motionless above the courtyard. Ravik stepped toward the edge of the platform and released his alpha aura. Selvara had felt that force countless times. It filled rooms, compelled obedience, and pushed weaker wolves to the floor. This time, it barely crossed the platform. Something far greater met it. Ravik flinched. For a fraction of a second, naked panic crossed his face. His own wolf was recoiling. Selvara could feel it through the mate bond, a frantic animal instinct clawing backward, demanding that its alpha kneel before whatever was approaching. Ravik seized the communication device clipped inside his jacket. "North perimeter, report." Silence. He pressed it again. "Gate command, answer me." Nothing. His voice sharpened. "All security stations, respond." Only static answered him. Then a low vibration moved through the stones. Engines. The sound came from beyond the mornpine tree line, growing steadily louder. Wolves turned toward the gates. 4 matte black armored vehicles emerged between the pines in perfect formation. They did not slow as they reached the estate road. The lead vehicle accelerated. "Close the gates," Ravik shouted. The guards near the entrance did not move. They were already on their knees. The armored vehicle struck the iron barrier at full force. Metal screamed. Both gates tore from their hinges and twisted across the driveway. Royal enforcers. They moved without wasted motion, spreading through the courtyard and disarming Vantress warriors who were too overwhelmed to resist. Captain Bren Varric emerged from the first vehicle. A pale scar crossed one side of his face, disappearing beneath the collar of his coat. He surveyed the courtyard once, then positioned himself beside the second vehicle, with one hand resting near the silver-forged weapon at his hip. No one spoke. The rear door opened. Alpha King Otheryn Valcor stepped out. He was taller than Selvara remembered. A long black coat framed his broad body, but it was not his size that forced the remaining warriors lower. It was his stillness. Every wolf in the courtyard shook beneath the power pouring from him, yet Otheryn moved, as though the crushing atmosphere cost him nothing. His ancient silver eyes swept across the platform. They found Selvara immediately. The world narrowed. Otheryn saw the powder hiding her pallor. He saw the stiffness in her spine, the shortened breaths, and the hand protecting her left side. He saw how she kept her head lowered whenever Ravik moved. And he saw fear so deeply trained into her body that she had begun apologizing simply by standing still. Something lethal entered the king's expression. His aura surged. The shock of it struck the platform like an invisible wave. Ravik dropped onto one knee. Stone cracked beneath the impact. A strangled sound escaped him as he tried to rise, but his body refused the command. Before his entire pack, the Alpha of Vantress remained pinned beneath the dominance of another wolf. Otheryn walked forward. "I received a message." His voice was not loud. It carried to every corner of the courtyard. "And I have come for the man responsible." Ravik forced his head upward. "Your Majesty, this invasion violates sovereign territory." Otheryn stopped at the base of the platform. "Does it?" "Vantress governs its internal affairs under the Verholm Accords. The Crown has no authority to breach my borders over a private disciplinary matter." Otheryn's silver eyes hardened. "You are quoting laws to the sovereign who helped write them." Ravik's face tightened. "Selvara is my lawfully marked mate. Her discipline falls under my authority." Otheryn reached inside his coat and withdrew a folded document sealed with black wax and the silver crest of the crown. Not after a formal invocation of sanctuary. Unease swept through the pack. Ravik stared at the document. There was no invocation. Otheryn broke the seal. There were 5 words. He raised his gaze to Selvara. For one moment, the fury in his eyes became something deeper. Then he faced the pack and read the message exactly as she had sent it. "He has broken my ribs." The courtyard erupted in whispers. Several Omegas looked toward Selvara's guarded side, an elder's face drained of color. 2 warriors lowered their eyes, guilt replacing confusion. Ravik surged against the pressure holding him down. "She is unstable. She has suffered episodes before. She fell during a hunt and constructed this accusation because she resented being corrected." Selvara's breath caught. Otheryn looked at Ravik as though he had spoken his final words. "I can smell your violence on her." Ravik went still. "From where I stand," Otheryn continued, I can hear the malformed friction of bone beneath her skin. One rib healed out of alignment because you left her without proper treatment. The whispers died. You did not discipline your Luna, Otheryn said. You shattered a woman who could not defend herself, then dressed your cowardice in law. Ravik's amber eyes flashed. I built this pack. No. You frightened it into silence. Otheryn glanced over the kneeling wolves. Strength creates loyalty. Weak men create hostages. Humiliation stripped the final control from Ravik's face. He turned toward his warriors. Defend your alpha. Kill them. No one moved. Not one guard lifted a weapon. Ravik looked from the broken gates to his kneeling soldiers, then to Selvara, as though only now understanding that every shield around him had disappeared. Territory had failed him. Mate law had failed him. The Verholm Accords had failed him. His reputation had failed him. His pack had failed him. Only violence remained. Bones cracked beneath Ravik's skin. His shoulders expanded violently, tearing through his tailored coat. Claws burst from his hands as coarse, dark gold fur spread over his twisting body. The stone platform fractured beneath his growing weight. With a deafening roar, Ravik's human shape tore apart, and his enormous wolf launched directly toward Otheryn's throat. Ravik's massive wolf crossed the distance in a single leap. The transformation had stripped away every trace of the polished alpha who had welcomed diplomats into Vantress Keep. What hurtled toward Otheryn was an 800-pound predator wrapped in dark gold fur, its shoulders ridged with old battle scars and its jaws spread wide enough to close around a man's throat. Several wolves screamed. Captain Brenvaric reached for his weapon. Otheryn did not move. He did not shift. He did not lower his center of gravity or raise his arms to protect his face. He simply watched Ravik approach with the terrible calm of a sovereign, observing the final mistake of a condemned man. Ravik's claws stretched toward his chest. Otheryn lifted one hand. His fingers closed around the wolf's throat in midair. The impact cracked the stone beneath Otheryn's boots. It did not move him backward. Ravik's body stopped so violently that his hind legs swung beneath him. A strangled snarl tore from his jaws as Otheryn held him suspended with one arm. The Vantress pack stared. They had watched Ravik overpower warriors twice his size. They had seen him return bloodied but victorious from territorial challenges. For years, they had treated his strength as something elemental and unquestionable. Now their alpha clawed helplessly at a man who had not even transformed to meet him. Ravik's talons raked across Otheryn's forearm. They left no wound. His paws struck again, shredding the sleeve of the king's black coat but failing to break the skin beneath it. Otheryn's silver eyes never left Ravik's. You were given law, he said, his voice low enough to make the nearest wolves strain to hear. You hid behind it. Ravik thrashed harder. You were given loyalty. You poisoned it with fear. Otheryn tightened his grip. And you were given a mate. His gaze flicked once toward Selvara. You shattered her. With one brutal downward movement, Otheryn slammed Ravik into the stone platform. The impact shook the courtyard. A web of cracks burst beneath the wolf's body. Dust rose around him as the breath exploded from his lungs. Ravik tried to rise. Otheryn's heel came down against the center of his spine. The crack echoed off the walls of Vantress Keep. Ravik released a high, broken howl. His hind legs collapsed beneath him. He dragged himself forward with his front claws, gouging pale lines into the stone, but everything below the shattered vertebrae hung uselessly behind him. For the first time since Selvara had known him, Ravik looked afraid. Otheryn crouched beside him and seized the thick fur at the back of his neck. He forced Ravik's head upward until the paralyzed wolf faced the hundreds who had obeyed him. Look at them. Ravik's breath came in wet, furious bursts. These are the wolves you claimed would die for you. Otheryn's gaze moved across the silent courtyard. Not one stepped forward. No one denied it. No one could. Otheryn pulled Ravik's head farther back, until the wolf's eyes met the ancient silver of his own. By the authority of the crown, and under the sanctuary provisions of the Werehome Accords, I strip you of the title of Alpha. The words carried across the courtyard with the weight of law. A tremor moved through the Vantress pack. I revoke your claim to Mournpine territory. Ravik's claws scraped uselessly against the stone. I release every wolf beneath your command, from allegiance to your bloodline. Something invisible shifted through the courtyard. Selvara felt it as a sudden loosening in the air, as though hundreds of throats had been freed from the same tightening chain. Otheryn leaned closer. And for the torture of Selvara Noxen, I strip you of your life. Ravik's amber eyes widened. Otheryn placed one hand beneath the wolf's jaw, and the other against the back of his skull. There was no hesitation. One sharp twist. The sound was small compared with the violence that had preceded it. Ravik's body went limp. The tyrant of Vantress died on the platform, where he had praised his own strength minutes earlier. Silence followed. Selvara stared at him, at the motionless claws, at the mouth that would never again tell her she had imagined the pain, at the eyes that could no longer search her face for signs of disobedience. He was dead. Ravik Drenhal was dead. For one impossible heartbeat, Selvara felt nothing. Then the mate bond snapped. Pain tore through the center of her chest, not like a blade, like a hook buried inside her heart and ripped violently free. Selvara gasped. The courtyard vanished beneath a burst of white light. Her heartbeat stumbled, struck twice in rapid succession, then seemed to stop altogether. Every muscle in her body seized. Her spine arched as a convulsion traveled through her from throat to ankle. The malformed rib drove inward. A new agony exploded beneath her left breast. Selvara tried to breathe. Her lung refused to expand. She heard someone shout her name, but the voice seemed to come from beneath deep water. Her knees collapsed. She never reached the stone. Otheryn released Ravik's body and crossed the platform faster than her eyes could follow. One moment he stood beside the corpse. The next, his arms closed around Selvara and pulled her against his chest. Selvara. The name emerged as a command, but fear fractured its edges. Her body convulsed again. Look at me. She could not. Her vision rolled in and out of darkness. Her fingers caught in the front of Otheryn's coat, twisting the fabric while she fought for air that would not come. Breathe, he ordered. Follow my voice. Stay with me. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. Otheryn's face changed. The sovereign who had faced an attacking Alpha without flinching looked down at her with open terror. Sereth! The rear door of the third vehicle flew open. Dr. Sereth Ilion rushed into the courtyard, carrying a reinforced medical case. He dropped beside Otheryn and pressed 2 fingers to Selvara's throat. Her rhythm is unstable. Another spasm seized her. Selvara cried out as the jagged pressure inside her ribs intensified. Sereth opened the front of her high-necked dress, enough to reach her injured side. His hands moved over the malformed bone, gentle but swift. Selvara's body jerked violently. Otheryn tightened his hold. What is happening? The mate bond severed under extreme trauma, Sereth said. Her nervous system is discharging through every major muscle group. Stop it. I can sedate the convulsions, but that is not the immediate danger. Sereth pressed carefully beneath the damaged ribs. Selvara screamed. He withdrew his hand, his expression turning grim. The complete fracture healed inward during the night. Each spasm is driving the fused edge closer to the left lung. Otheryn looked at the blood staining Selvara's lips. Move her to the vehicle. No. The single word halted the nearest enforcers. Sereth shook his head. The Mournpine roads are too rough. One hard impact could force the bone through the lung. Then fix her here. Sereth opened his medical case. I have to break the ribs again, and reset them before the next convulsion shifts the bone any farther. Otheryn's arms locked around Selvara. She is already in shock. I know. Will she survive it? Sereth looked at the irregular movement beneath Selvara's skin, then at the pulse fluttering weakly in her throat. The pain could stop her heart. Another spasm tore through her. Selvara's breath vanished completely. Dr. Sereth placed both hands over her malformed ribs and looked directly at the Alpha King. "To save her," he said, "I have to break her again." "Do it." Otheryn's answer came without hesitation. Dr. Sereth Ilion opened the medical case wider and reached for a narrow leather bite guard, several glass syringes, and 2 silver instruments etched with healing runes. "Hold her upright," he said. "If she twists when the bone separates, it could tear the lung before I can reset it." Otheryn shifted Selvara against his body. Otheryn. She remembered silver eyes beneath the lights of the Verholm Sovereign Summit. A private number pressed into her hand. 6 words glowing across a burner phone. "I'm coming, and he won't survive." He had come. Ravik had not survived. Yet Selvara could no longer draw enough air to understand what freedom was supposed to feel like. Her body convulsed again. The broken edge drove inward. A strangled cry tore from her throat. Otheryn tightened his hold immediately. "Stay with me, Selvara." She tried to turn toward his voice. Her muscles refused. "I cannot breathe." The words emerged so faintly that they barely existed. "You will." For the first time, the Alpha King's voice trembled. "I crossed the continent because you called me. I tore down his gates. I ended him. You do not get to leave now." Sereth glanced up while preparing the syringes. "Keep speaking to her. The bond shock is pulling her under." Otheryn lowered his face beside Selvara's temple. "Listen to me. Not the pain, not the courtyard. Me." Her fingers found his forearm and closed weakly around it. "I'm tired. I know. So tired. I know." His jaw tightened. "But I refuse to lose you after reaching you." Sereth lifted the bite guard. "Selvara, open your mouth." She did not respond. Otheryn touched her jaw gently. "You need to let him help you." Her lips parted. Sereth slid the leather guard between her teeth and secured it behind her head. Then he positioned one palm over the malformed rib and the other just beneath it. A faint golden light collected between his fingers. For one confused instant, she was no longer in the courtyard. She was back inside Vantress Keep, trapped beneath Ravik's hand, while he called pain correction and cruelty discipline. Otheryn felt the change in her. His grip loosened just enough to distinguish restraint from possession. "Selvara, hear me. This is not punishment." Her gaze struggled toward him. "No one is correcting you. No one owns you. This is to keep you alive." Sereth waited. The healing light around his hands brightened. "Sire." Otheryn's silver eyes closed for half a second. Then he drew Selvara more securely against him and placed his hand over hers. "Proceed." Sereth drove concentrated healing force into the fused fracture. The sound was brutal. A thick, wet crack split through the courtyard. Selvara's entire body became rigid, her teeth crushed into the leather guard. Sereth released the rib and reached for the first syringe. Her heart is slowing. He drove the needle into Selvara's thigh and emptied a clear cardiac stabilizer into her bloodstream. A second syringe followed, filled with a dark amber sedative. "Pulse?" Otheryn pressed 2 fingers against her throat. "Faint." Sereth injected the third compound directly beside the injury. The liquid shimmered beneath Selvara's skin as the cellular accelerator spread around the newly aligned ribs. "Do not let her lie flat," Sereth ordered. "Keep her airway open." Otheryn cradled her head against his shoulder. For several seconds, nothing changed. Selvara remained unnaturally still. The courtyard held its breath with him. Then her chest rose. A shallow inhale. A pause. Another breath followed, deeper than the first. Only after Sereth repeated that she was stable did Otheryn lift his gaze from her. The fear disappeared from his expression. The king returned. He rose with Selvara held securely against his chest. "Captain." Bren stepped forward. "Your Majesty. Vantress Pack is now under temporary crown administration. Seal every office, archive and communication chamber inside the keep." "Yes, sire." "Detain Ravik's senior guards, advisors and physicians. No one leaves Mornpine territory until their role in this is established." Unease spread through the kneeling wolves. Otheryn's silver gaze moved across them. "Some of you helped him." No one looked up. Some concealed the evidence. Some enforced his isolation. Some heard her pain and decided silence was safer than courage. His voice hardened. And some simply watched. The accusation struck deeper than a shouted threat. "Captain Bren Varric will investigate every one of you. Those who acted under coercion will be heard. Those who profited from her suffering will answer to the crown." Bren inclined his head and began issuing orders to the royal enforcers. Movement broke through the courtyard as weapons were collected, and Vantress officials were separated from the crowd. Then, a frail figure emerged from the open doors of the keep. Maelys Oren crossed the fractured stones with a small weathered bag clutched against her chest. Her limp was pronounced, but she did not stop until she reached Otheryn. "These belong to her, Your Majesty." She opened the bag enough to reveal several worn books, folded winter clothes, and a faded blanket trimmed with blue thread. "Her mother made the blanket," Maelys said. "Ravik wanted it burned. She hid it with me." Otheryn's gaze lowered to Maelys's hands. Faint healing residue still clung to her fingers. "You treated her. When I could. You knew what he was doing." Maelys's eyes filled with shame. "I knew enough to hate myself for not stopping more." "You kept her alive." Otheryn looked at Bren. "Add Maelys Oren to the royal convoy." Maelys blinked. "Sire? You are coming to Orlith Crown Estate. I am only an Omega. You are the only wolf in this place who remembered that loyalty without conscience is cowardice." Tears spilled down Maelys's face. She bowed and followed an enforcer toward the vehicles. Otheryn carried Selvara from the platform himself. He did not hand her to Sereth or to one of the guards. He entered the second armored vehicle and settled into the rear seat, with her resting across his lap, one hand supporting her head and the other protecting the freshly reset ribs. The convoy moved. It passed Ravik's body without slowing and rolled through the gates his arrival had shattered. Vantress Keep disappeared behind them. Black stone faded into rain. The ironwood towers vanished inside the rising Mornpine fog. Selvara slept through the destruction of her prison. She did not know Ravik's authority had been dissolved, or that the wolves who enabled him were being dragged from their offices. She did not know Maelys rode in the vehicle behind her, guarding the few possessions that remained from her former life. She knew only that another alpha held her while she was too weak to resist. Otheryn looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms, and understood that rescuing Selvara's body would be far easier than convincing her she was free. Selvara woke up because she could breathe. The sensation frightened her. Air entered her lungs fully. She believed she had died. Then unfamiliar curtains moved beside an open window. Morning light spilled across pale stone walls and a carved ceiling painted with silver branches. The bed beneath her was too soft. The sheets smelled of cedar, clean linen, and medicinal herbs rather than Ravik's cologne. Selvara's eyes flew open. She tried to sit. Panic moved faster than her healing body. The room tilted. Her hand flew to her ribs as she dragged herself toward the headboard, searching for a door, a weapon, any sign of the man who might be waiting to punish her for waking incorrectly. "Selvara!" Maelys Oren rose from a chair beside the window. Selvara stared at her. The elderly Omega wore clean gray clothing marked with a small silver crest. Her weathered bag rested near the bed, and Selvara's faded blue-edged blanket lay folded across her lap. "Maelys? I'm here. Where is he?" Maelys approached slowly, keeping both hands visible. "Ravik is dead." The words entered the room and seemed to change its shape. Selvara searched Melis's face for uncertainty. He is truly dead? Yes. A memory struck her. A massive wolf suspended by the throat. Otheryn's heel descending. Ravik's body going still. Then pain. Her chest tearing open from the inside. Selvara touched her ribs again. They broke them. Her voice cracked. Melis stopped beside the bed. Dr. Sareth had no choice. The bone had healed toward your lung. The mate bond shock was forcing it inward. Selvara pressed more firmly against the area, expecting agony. Nothing came. Only a faint tenderness remained beneath the skin. They healed properly this time, Melis said. Your lung was not punctured. Your heart stabilized before we left Mornpine territory. How long? 4 days. Selvara looked toward the open window. Beyond it stretched a valley washed in morning gold. Forested hills descended toward a wide silver river. No iron gates divided the land. No patrol towers pierced the horizon. Where are we? Orlith Crown Estate. Eldermere Valley. The name tightened something inside Selvara. The king's home. His private estate, Melis corrected softly. Not the royal palace. Selvara glanced toward the door. It was closed. Is it locked? No. Who has been inside? Dr. Sareth, myself, 2 attendants when you needed to be changed. Selvara's breathing shortened. Melis immediately added, No one enters without permission now. The attendants were supervised. Alpha King Otheryn gave strict orders that this room belongs to you for as long as you choose to remain. For as long as she chose. The words should have brought relief. Instead, Selvara searched for the condition hidden inside them. Ravik had also used gentle language when he wanted obedience. Her gaze moved across the enormous room. The polished furniture, silver fixtures and mountain view formed a prison more beautiful than Vantress Keep had ever been. A different cage could still have an unlocked door. A quiet knock sounded. Selvara flinched. Melis turned toward her. May he enter? The question confused her. Who? Otheryn. Not the king. Not his majesty. Selvara stared at the door, remembering silver eyes fixed on her across the Vantress courtyard. Yes. Melis opened it. Alpha King Otheryn Valcor entered alone. He wore no ceremonial coat or weapons. A dark shirt covered his broad frame, its sleeves folded below his elbows. Without the royal enforcers and crushing force of his sovereign aura, he should have appeared less dangerous. He did not. His presence filled the chamber without effort. Selvara's body became still. Otheryn noticed. He stopped several steps from the bed and did not come closer. How do you feel? She did not know how to answer. He had crossed sovereign borders after receiving her message. He had destroyed Ravik before the Vantress pack. He had held her while Dr. Sareth broke her ribs again. He had carried her from the only home she had known for years. Alive, she said. Something moved across his expression. Relief, quickly controlled. That is enough for today. Otheryn gestured toward the chair Melis had vacated. May I sit? Selvara hesitated, then nodded. He seated himself without moving the chair closer. Melis touched Selvara's hand. I will be outside. The door closed behind her. Silence remained. Otheryn looked at Selvara's guarded posture, but he did not ask her to relax. He did not reach for her or attempt to soften what had happened between them. There are things you need to know about Ravik, he said. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. I know what he was. You knew the part he allowed you to see. Otheryn's voice remained controlled, but anger hardened its edges. Royal investigators entered his offices after we left Vantress. They found territorial deeds, human banking records, and encrypted correspondence hidden beneath the Western Archive. Selvara frowned. Territorial deeds? Ravik was transferring protected Lycan land through an organization called the Marrowgate Trust. She recognized the name. I saw it in his documents once. He said it handled conservation purchases. It concealed illegal sales. Otheryn leaned forward, resting his forearms against his knees. Human companies were buying migration routes, burial grounds, and forest surrounding several concealed pack settlements. The deeds described the land as undeveloped wilderness. If humans entered those areas, they would discover us. Cold spread through Selvara's stomach. Centuries of separation between humans and Lycans depended on protected territories remaining untouched. One exposed settlement could be denied. Several could not. Who was paying him? Senator Calder Wren. The name carried its own danger. Even isolated within Vantress Keep, Selvara had heard of the human politician, whose influence reached through military committees, development agencies, and private security firms. Otheryn continued. Wren financed the purchases through the Marrowgate Trust. Ravik diverted part of the money into weapons, training compounds, and a rogue militia composed of exiled wolves. For what purpose? To weaken neighboring packs, seize their territory, and challenge the crown once human construction forced them from hiding. Selvara stared at him. Ravik had not merely been building influence. He had been preparing a war. If the developers discovered Lycans occupying land they legally purchased, Otheryn said, human authorities would intervene, packs would defend themselves, Wren would use the violence to justify military action, and Ravik would blame you for failing to protect them. Yes. The room no longer felt peaceful. It felt suspended over something vast and unstable. How long did you know? I suspected him for more than a year. The answer struck harder than Selvara expected. You knew? I knew land records were being altered. I knew money was moving through human accounts connected to Mournpine territory. I did not have evidence tying the transactions directly to Ravik. You could have investigated. Vantress was autonomous under the Verholm Accords. Otheryn's jaw tightened. Without council authorization, material proof of treason, or a sanctuary invocation from a ranking member of the pack, Crown agents entering Ravik's private archives would have constituted an unlawful seizure. Selvara heard one phrase above the others. A sanctuary invocation. Otheryn held her gaze. Yes. Her hand moved unconsciously toward the ribs Ravik had broken. My message. Your communication created immediate crown jurisdiction. As Luna of Vantress, you were a ranking pack authority requesting protection from your alpha. The 5 words had not merely summoned him, they had opened the gates legally. Otheryn continued speaking, but Selvara barely heard him. Ravik had taught her that kindness always concealed a transaction. Gifts became debts. Comfort became leverage. Affection became proof that she owed obedience. Now she saw the same pattern forming around her again. A royal bedroom, a physician, protection, and beneath it all, the political authority Otheryn had needed. Her message had delivered Ravik's territory into his hands. Selvara looked at the man who had crossed the continent, executed her mate, and carried her from Vantress. Was I nothing more than the loophole you needed to enter? Pain crossed Otheryn's face before he could conceal it. Not anger, not insult, something quieter and far more personal. No. The answer came with enough force to stop Selvara's next breath. Otheryn rose from the chair, but he did not approach the bed. He moved toward the open window instead, placing distance between them, as though he understood that another powerful man standing over her would make every word sound like coercion. The conspiracy gave me lawful authority to seize Ravik's records, he said. Your sanctuary invocation gave me the right to enter Vantress without council approval. Selvara's fingers tightened around her mother's blanket. But neither is why I crossed the continent myself. Then why? Otheryn looked beyond the window toward Eldermere Valley. For several seconds, the Alpha King who had broken Vantress beneath his presence seemed uncertain how to continue. Do you remember the Verholm Sovereign Summit 5 years ago? Selvara remembered polished marble halls, hundreds of political delegates, and Ravik's hand resting constantly against the back of her neck. She also remembered stepping onto a moonlit balcony because the ballroom had become too crowded, and a stranger with silver eyes watching her as though he had heard something no one else could hear. "You gave me the number there." "Yes. You said I should use it once. Because once would be enough." Otheryn turned toward her. "The moment you entered that balcony, my wolf recognized you." Selvara's body went still. The air between them seemed to narrow. Otheryn did not soften the truth. "You are my true mate." The words should have produced something immediate, a rush of instinct, a pull beneath her skin, or recognition from the wolf that had lived half-silent under Ravik's mark. Nothing came. Otheryn saw the confusion on her face. "You did not feel it," he said. "Ravik had already marked you. His claim suppressed your side of the bond before mine awakened. So you felt it alone. For 5 years." Selvara searched his expression for manipulation. Ravik had called possession love. He had used the mate bond as evidence that her body and choices belonged to him. Otheryn seemed to understand exactly where her thoughts had gone. "A true mate bond does not give me ownership of you," he said. "It gives me no right you have not chosen to grant. Yet you knew." "Yes. And you left me with him." The accusation entered him like a blade. Otheryn did not defend himself. "I did." His acceptance unsettled her more than an excuse would have. "Why?" "Because Ravik was a recognized alpha, and you were his lawfully claimed Luna. If I had challenged him without your direct invocation, every Western pack would have believed the crown had crossed sovereign borders to steal another alpha's mate. You could have told them the truth. I had no evidence of what he was doing to you. You saw that I was afraid. I did." His voice dropped. "And I allowed law to outweigh what I saw." Otheryn's hands closed at his sides. "Had I taken you from Vantress then, Ravik would have called it royal conquest. They would have killed me. They would have called it necessary." The room seemed colder. Otheryn had not merely risked provoking Ravik. He had risked turning Selvara into the justification for a continental war, and then the sacrifice used to end it. "I could not take you without becoming the kind of ruler I condemned," he said. "But I could place one choice in your hands. The number. The only lawful power I could give you without Ravik discovering it." Selvara remembered Otheryn pressing the folded paper into her palm, while Ravik spoke with another alpha inside the ballroom. "Use it once." Nothing more. No promise she had understood. No explanation that would have endangered her if overheard. I watched Vantress from a distance after that. Before Selvara could decide what to do with the truth, a knock sounded beyond the door. Otheryn waited until she nodded before answering. Captain Bren Varric entered and bowed. "The council's arrival has been confirmed for tomorrow morning." Otheryn's expression became unreadable. "All of them?" "Every Western representative. 3 of Ravik's known allies are traveling together." Bren left after receiving a quiet dismissal. Selvara watched the door close. "They are coming for you. They are coming for both of us." Otheryn returned to the chair, but remained standing beside it. "They will challenge Ravik's execution. They will claim I manipulated sanctuary law to seize Vantress territory. They will question your memory, your stability, and whether your injuries justified sovereign intervention." Selvara's stomach tightened. "They will call me a liar. Some will. And you need me to testify. I will not require it." Otheryn reached into his pocket and withdrew a small black box. "You have 2 choices." He placed the box on the table between them. "If you wish to leave before the council arrives, I will arrange a protected identity. You may choose a private estate anywhere outside pack jurisdiction. It will belong to you. No guards will remain unless you request them, and neither I nor the Crown will contact you without permission." Selvara stared at him. "And the second choice? You remain. You speak before the council if you decide your voice should be heard. You help expose Ravik's crimes and change the laws that protected him. Otheryn opened the box. An ancient silver ring rested inside, engraved with the crest Selvara had seen on royal documents and the armor of crown enforcers. And if, after time and without obligation, you choose to stand beside me, you would do so as Luna Royal. Selvara looked from the ring to Otheryn. He lifted the box and placed it in her hands. He did not touch her skin. "This is not a claim," he said. "It is not repayment for your rescue, and it is not a decision you owe me tonight." Then, he crossed the room and stopped beside the window, turning his back so she would not be forced to search his face for the answer he wanted. Selvara held the symbol of the crown between both hands. Leaving would carry her beyond Ravik's laws, beyond councils and alphas, and every voice that had chosen not to hear her. Choosing the ring would place her before that same world, and ask her to speak while it decided whether her suffering was worthy of belief. The royal seal rested in Selvara's palms. It was heavier than it looked. Now it waited for a woman who had spent years asking permission to speak. Selvara's first instinct was to look at Otheryn, to study his expression, to find the answer he wanted and shape herself around it. The impulse came so naturally that she almost obeyed before recognizing what it was. Ravik had trained that reflex into her. He had taught her to search his eyes before selecting a dress, answering a question, or entering a room. Every decision had carried a hidden test. Every silence had contained a command she was expected to understand. Even now, with Ravik dead, part of him remained inside the pause before her choices. Selvara lifted her gaze. Otheryn still stood beside the window with his back partly turned. He did not ask what she had decided. He did not remind her that the council was coming, or that Ravik's allies would attack his authority. He did not try to make gratitude sound like love. He simply waited. The freedom of that silence frightened her more than an order would have. What did she want when no one was commanding her? Selvara looked again at the ring. She could leave before sunrise. Otheryn had promised her a protected identity and a private home beyond pack jurisdiction. She could disappear, somewhere Ravik's name carried no power. No council would question her. No alpha would demand that she reopen the worst nights of her life before strangers. Leaving would not make her weak. After years of captivity, choosing peace would still be an act of courage. But remaining did not mean she owed Otheryn her heart. It did not mean accepting a mate bond, a royal title, or another man's authority over her body. It meant refusing to let Ravik control the story after death. Selvara remembered the Vantress courtyard. Hundreds of wolves had applauded, while Ravik praised her devotion. Some had suspected the truth. Others had known enough to look away. How many women still lived behind elegant doors while pack law called their suffering discipline? How many injuries vanished before witnesses could see them? How many mates had been taught that fear was loyalty, and endurance was consent? She thought of Maelis entering the bedroom despite the danger. The elderly Omega had possessed no royal blood, no army, and no power to challenge Ravik, yet she had offered medicine, hidden Selvara's possessions, and placed gentle hands over bones another wolf had broken. Maelis had done what she could. Otheryn had done what the law allowed. Selvara had waited until waiting became more dangerous than defiance. Her fingers moved across the edge of the box. 5 words had changed everything. "He has broken my ribs." She had typed them while bleeding inside a dark wardrobe, believing Ravik might open the door before help could reach her. At the time, the message had felt like surrender. Now she understood it differently. It had been the first decision Ravik had not made for her in years. She had chosen the number, chosen the truth, chosen to press send. The rescue began with Otheryn's reply, but her freedom had begun one moment earlier, with her own hand moving despite the fear. Selvara closed the ring box. The sound made Otheryn turn. He did not step closer. "I will face the council," she said. His silver eyes searched hers carefully. "You do not have to." "I know." The answer surprised them both with its steadiness. Selvara pushed the blanket aside and placed her feet on the floor. Weakness remained in her legs, but no shattered bone moved beneath her skin. She stood. I will tell them what Ravik did. I will tell them how he used healing to erase the evidence and pack sovereignty to keep everyone outside. Otheryn remained silent. I will expose the Marrowgate Trust. I will name Senator Calder Wren and every person who helped sell protected territory. Her voice strengthened with each word. And I will not allow them to call this an unfortunate private matter. Laws that protect an alpha from accountability do not protect the pack. They protect the abuser. Otheryn's expression changed. Not triumph. Respect. If you testify, he said, they will challenge you. Then they will hear my answers. They may question your memory. I remember enough. They may accuse you of seeking power. Selvara looked down at the royal seal in her hands. Power is not the same as ownership. She raised her eyes to his. I will not stand beside you because you rescued me. I will not accept a bond because destiny decided one exists, and I will never belong to the crown. Otheryn inclined his head. You will belong only to yourself. For the first time, Selvara believed he meant it. Are you certain? He asked. The old instinct returned, urging her to inspect his face before answering. This time, she let it pass. She opened the ring box, removed the royal seal, and held it beneath the morning light. Tell the council to prepare themselves. The Queen has a lot to say.
Subscribe to Moonlit Romance Stories. And if this story is already in your chest, leave a comment. I read every single one.